Did you know that there's 4 primary reasons why your dog is not listening to you? Well, in today's video, I'm going to be going over those 4 reasons as well as providing you with a solution to each one of those reasons. With that being said, let's get into this video. So the first reason why your dog won't listen to you is that they do not understand. I'll write it out for you. Do not understand. This is a case where you'll have an owner who's trying to tell their dog something and the dog simply does not understand what the owner is asking them to do. This could be something as simple as a recall, a sit, really any obedience behavior that the owner is trying to tell the dog. The dog does not understand what the owner is trying to tell them. This accounts for roughly 60% of the time when your dog is not listening to you. If your dog's not listening to you, you need to first ask yourself this question: does my dog understand what I am asking them to do? This is, again, usually the case 60% of the time. This is the case of why your dog is not listening. The solution to this is quite simple. We need to go back and teach the dog. Once we teach the dog what we want them to do, then we can then ask them or command them to do the things we have taught them to do. And this is going to clear up most of the issues that you're having with your dog not listening, is the fact that you just haven't taught them. So the second reason why your dog is not listening to you is because they did not hear you. Did not hear. There's quite a few instances, and about, not a ton, but about 10% of the time, right? 10% of the time, your dog understands the obedience that you're trying to tell them, and you tell them the command. Let's say it's a recall. You'll tell them, come, and your dog just didn't hear you. Perhaps they're 100 feet away, it's windy out, there's a construction crew nearby, and there's all these other noises, and your dog does not hear you. Or things such as, so we got the distance, other noises, reflection. This is a huge one that a lot of people do not take into consideration. It's the reflection of your voice. If your dog's far away from you and you yell at them, and typically you've taught the recall, your dog understands recall. When you say come, they will come to you. But if they're far away and maybe your reflection in your voice is different, you say come or come. Those sound different to your dog, and your dog understands one but not the other. So your dog does not hear you, or what you're saying over that distance sounds different to the dog, and so they do not listen to you. So this is going to account for about 10% of the time when your dog does not listen to the obedience. And this is, again, after you have trained the dog to do the thing you're asking them to do. Now, the third reason why your dog is not listening when you tell them to do something, such as an obedience command, is they are not motivated. And this is going to account for about 25% of the time your dog does not listen to you. Is because they are simply not motivated by whatever it is you have to offer them. For example, again, going back to the example of come or recall with your dog, if you have guests coming over and your dog runs to the door to go greet those guests and you say come, you are telling the dog that they have to come away from something that they want, which is to see the other guests, in order to come back to you. In order for your dog to come back to you and leave the people, right, that are highly valuable, highly motivating for your dog, you need to motivate them, your dog, with something of equal or greater value than what the dog is going to, or what the dog is currently doing. So this is often the case in dogs. Dogs do what works for them, and they will do what pays them the most. The dog is going to do what gives them the most pleasure. And if going to greet the guests gives them more pleasure than coming back to you, they're going to do that, right? So 25% of the time when your dog's not listening, it's probably because you are not motivating them enough. Now, we can motivate a dog through many different means, right? We got praise. Got to use lots of praise. Play with your dog. Personal play. Play with a toy. Treats, if you have treats. I don't know many dogs that don't like to eat. In fact, all dogs got to eat at some point. And then we can also use pressure in the form of leash pressure. If you're using an e-collar, you can use that. But you have to motivate the dog in some way, shape, or form in order to do the obedience that you're asking them to do. If you're not motivating your dog and your dog isn't motivated to do any one of those things, then they're probably not going to listen to you. Even if they know what you ask them to do, they've heard you, but then they're not motivated, they're not going to do it. You have to motivate your dog by some way, shape, or form. And the last reason, and this only accounts for maybe about 5% of dogs, right? And 5% of the time your dog doesn't want to listen to you, is that they do not see you as an authority figure. And this doesn't account for a whole lot of dogs, right? Authority. They do not see you as an authority, right? Now, again, ideally we want to motivate our dogs to do what we ask them to do, right? If I tell my dog to come, I want to motivate him. I want to have some kind of reward once he does come back to me. But that's not always the case. There may be times when the dog has other forms of motivation that we cannot compete against. Let's say the dog is chasing after a squirrel across the road, and I have treats. My treats are not going to be equal or greater value to get the dog to come back. I cannot motivate the dog to come back to me. So I have to rely on the relationship I've established with my dog and the authority that I have established in that relationship in order to get the dog to come back to me, in order to get the dog to go away from something that they desire in order for them to come back to me and engage with me. They need to give up something that they want, which is very unnatural for a dog. Again, most cases we're going to want to use some form of motivation, but when we don't have motivation, we have to rely on that relationship and that authority we've established. And that, it's hard to build, right? But the one key way to build this is a relationship. We need to build a strong foundation and a strong relationship with our dogs in order for this remaining 5%, right? So if your dog's not listening to you, right, which is if you're watching this video, that's you stumbled upon the right video because your dog's most likely not listening to you, which is why you found this video. 60% of the time, they just don't know what you're asking them to do. Go back to the basics. Go back to teaching your dog what it is you're trying to have them do, whether it be sit, stay, come, the whole 9 yards. Maybe they just don't hear you. That's even my dogs. I'll tell them to do something, and they do not hear me due to something. Simply just repeat the command. Use the same voice that you train with. Don't change it up. Or your dog's not motivated. Make sure you're motivating your dog throughout the training process. Even once your dog understands the obedience that you've trained them to do, continue to motivate your dog. If you don't motivate your dog anymore, they're not going to want to do the obedience, even if they know it, even if they hear it. And that last bit, why your dog's not listening to you, which, doesn't account for a whole lot, but it is still there about 5% of the time. Your dog doesn't see you as an authority figure and will choose to do things that they want to do in spite of knowing it, in spite of the motivation that you are providing them. They will still do that. And the best way, again, is to build that relationship. So if you're struggling with building a relationship with your dog, well, you're lucky, because today if you go down in the video description, you can join my 11-day dog relationship challenge that is going to help you build that relationship with your dog in order to overcome that. It's also going to help you with motivating your dog, and getting your dog to listen to you via motivation, and incorporating play and usage of treats in order to help motivate your dog. So highly recommend you take a look at that video. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.